When you first go to launch your kite, you're in a more vulnerable position and you have some unknown variables to take into account. How is the wind? Is it strong enough? Is it too strong? How gusty is it? Have you chosen the right size kite for the conditions? Is your kite adjusted properly? Are there any issues with the lines or the bridles or the bar? And depending on your launch location, you might have some people nearby or some obstacles. You might be in a tight spot. There could be some hazards. And if your kite goes out of control, you stand a better chance of getting hurt because there's hard objects around. That doesn't mean that in the water is automatically safer, as my friend Mike likes to point out, but it is kind of a critical and crucial time. So have a look at this.
Oh shit! You're gonna get hurt. Oh. Grab onto the tree. I got all that on video.
And this. In 20 years of kiting, of teaching, of running a kite school, I've seen so many people stuffing their launches, having the kite go out of control, including experienced people, people that seem very confident, myself, before I learned a good launch procedure. And so it's no surprise that we often see people going to launch their kite and they're a little bit nervous, they're unsure, they may be tense or stressed, not completely knowing what's going to happen when the kite leaves the helper's hands after they give the thumbs up. What do we know about this frame of mind? I did another video on it, but when you're tense, when you're nervous, what do you get? Tunnel vision, sensory exclusion. You may forget to check some things, and that's not good for your launch either. So the good news is, if you have and consistently use a complete and methodical launch procedure each time, a checklist if you will, you're miles ahead of the game. Because all those cases that we've seen of people losing control when they launch, if you analyze it, because we try to learn from everyone, if you trace it back, like many other kite incidents, almost without exception, it comes back to insufficient procedures or checks that haven't been done properly. Our launch procedure we made because, after all, we started to wonder, with these outfits that give out instructor licenses, some are better than others. Why do we still see this happening so many times? Why don't they focus on and offer a more detailed, comprehensive, better launch procedure for people to follow every time that ticks all those boxes and eliminates the unknowns? So we came up with one ourselves, with the input of many instructors, observing many students, using after-action reviews, and we call this launch procedure SPLAT. We use it in our kite school. Every student from day one learns this procedure and follows it every time. I use it, and although it's more detailed and thorough, it usually only takes me a few seconds to go through it because I've done it 1,000 times. But it's important to hit every spot along the way. And here's how it works. SPLAT, your launch procedure. SPLAT stands for situation, position of you, the kite, compared to the wind and the beach and the water. L for lines and safety systems. A for around, that's a 360 check, and T for thumbs up. So before you even pick up the bar, have a look around. Maybe things have changed since you started to pump the kites. Maybe there's clouds coming in. Maybe there's people in your area that weren't there before. Just have a look at the area and know what you're dealing with. And a big part of knowing your situation is knowing where the across the wind line is. So if you need to, go and stand by your kite or by your bar, put your back to the wind, put your arms out, and look down those lines so you know that line. Because when you find your position, the first step is to make sure that bar is downwind of the kite, downwind of the across the wind line. One of the most common screw-ups that we see is the helper's trying to hold their kite and they can barely hold onto it because there's a lot of power in the kite. That's always a sign that the person with the bar went upwind too far first and then pulled the lines tight. Now you can start to get into position. And this is really the guts of this launch procedure. So go downwind, pick up the bar, put your safety leash in first. It's not the time to put your chicken loop in yet. Instead, hold it with your bottom hand, with your top hand, pull the bar all the way in. Pull those lines tight so you have good tension in the front lines, and keeping that tension in the front lines, slowly walk upwind until you feel that the wind is just starting to fill the kite. That's the approximate edge of the window. So when you're walking upwind to find the edge of the window, make sure that you keep tension in both of those front lines. Sometimes we'll see the top front line is straight and the bottom line is sagging. That means you need to take a half a step back or so and get tension in those front lines. Otherwise, it doesn't really work, you don't get the results you need, and you're likely to walk too far upwind without realizing it. Then, standing where you are, let your bar out to make it easier for your helper. With your bottom hand, hook in your chicken loop. Now you can fine-tune your location for the edge of the window for where you need to be. Take that bar, move upwind little by little, check that tension in the bar until you find the place where you can feel that there's power coming into the kite. You want to feel that when you pull the bar in, you get good tension on the back lines, and when you sheet the bar out, the kite depowers. This is what we call the backline tension check. Because if you pull a little bit and you get a lot of power in the kite, you're either standing too far upwind or the kite's too big. So walk upwind until you can feel that tension in the lines. What you want is that the helper is holding the kite lightly, and you can feel the power, and the kite is almost flying by itself already. If you see that your helper is holding the kite like this and the cloth is flapping, well, that's an indication you need to walk upwind a bit more, because if you let go of the kite, then it's going to backstall. If you see that the helper is having difficulty holding onto the kite, well, you're too far upwind, so go back down. Take your time to find just the right position. It's really important. So your backline tension check tells you if you're standing in the right place when you launch. It tells you if your kite is too big for the conditions, and it gives a very good indication of whether or not your kite is tuned properly or if you have any issues with the bridles or the lines. And it's a crucial part of every good launch procedure. So your L, your lines and safety systems, take that extra time to check to make sure your bar looks good, your lines aren't tangled or twisted, and make sure that your chicken loop is okay all the way on your hook, your bar is fine, your depower line isn't wrapped around the bar. That happens sometimes. You've got good motion on the bar. At this point, we teach it's the responsibility of the helper to check all four lines, check the connection points, make sure that the bridle is not tangled. So we had a case not that long ago. Someone came to use our spot, and she was pretty experienced. She could ride a surfboard, tricks, do jumps and all that. And she very kind of casually walked into place, put the chicken loop in, gave her thumbs up, but the problem was the back line on the top was wrapped around the tip of the kite a few times. So in effect, it was that much shorter, which achieves the same thing as if you just pull that top side of the bar. So of course, when she gave the thumbs up, the kite shot through the wind window, powered up, it picked her up in the air, she was flying through the air, and slammed her into the ground. And she was okay, slammed her into the ground, but she was a half a second and maybe a meter away from smashing her face on the jet ski that was standing there. The lesson we learned from this was, this didn't happen because the back line was wrapped around the tip of the kite. No, it happened because she neglected to do her backline tension check. That would have told her that there's something wrong. So if you're gonna go launch your kite and it doesn't feel right, just stop. Check it very carefully until you address it, and then continue. As it turns out in this case, the kite ended up in the trees. We had to shut down the launch area, fix everything. The people that were waiting to launch had to wait a little bit longer, and then we got things going again. So before you give that thumbs up, do a 360 check, look around, check to see if there's someone just upwind of you. They're probably going to come back down into your path of travel, into the launch zone. If there's someone down the beach walking up the beach with the kite in the air, that could be in your way. Make sure that someone hasn't just walked into your area that you didn't know about. And especially look out to sea to make sure you have a clear path out to sea. We have a lot of people that miss this, but before you launch your kite, you need to have a clear path out. If there's somebody coming in that wants to land their kite, just wait, let them land their kite and let them get out of the way, because you don't have right of way until your kite is in the air. So at that point, hopefully You can park your kite right there, move into the water, pick up your board along the way, body drag out a safe distance, and then do your water start. So here's another story and a lesson learned from someone who came to launch in front of our place. She stood at the water's edge and put the kite towards the land. Now, whether you do that or put the kite towards the water, that's a topic for a different video. But when she went to launch her kite, she didn't do her backline check. She wasn't standing far enough upwind. So when she gave her thumbs up, the kite backstalled deep into the window before it shot forward again. So it was a holiday, the beach was a bit crowded. There was a couple sitting on the beach with a baby buggy, and when that kite backstalled, it just went above that baby buggy by about that much before it shot forward again. Another foot lower and it would have got hung up in the baby buggy, and who knows what could have happened. But she regained control of the kite, brought it across to the other side of the window, and went out, had a good kite with no incidents. But when she came back, I talked with her and I said, do you know what happened when we launched? And she said, I never knew that there was a baby buggy right there. And it was this far away from her kite. That's tunnel vision. It happens to all of us. And that's what the 360-degree check is for, is just to stop, slow down, and make sure you're aware of everything. And then T, give your thumbs up. In that moment, after you give your thumbs up and your helper releases the kite, the VDWS teaches that you should take that bottom hand you gave the thumbs up with and put it on your chicken loop, so that if something goes wrong and the kite goes out of control, your hand's already there, bang, you can pop the release. That's good. It's something we've talked a lot about in our instructor groups. It's my opinion that if up till that point you've done all your checks correctly, especially the backline tension check, and your helper is holding the kite very lightly, number one, the chances of your kite going out of control, of something going wrong, is far, far less. And number two hands on the bar does give you much better control of the kite. During that time, you need to bring it from out of the kiter's hand and stabilize it at 10 o'clock. If you get that instinctive reaction that almost all of us get, if something goes wrong, if we get scared and we pull that bar, if you've only got your top hand on the bar, that's gonna send the kite screaming up and across the wind window and can make it worse. So you have to decide what's good for you, and hopefully the way you do it is a result of a conscious decision and not just because you haven't really given it any thought. So to recap, overarching principles: do all of your checks every time, communicate with your helper. Before you go to pick up your bar, recheck the situation, make sure you know what your environment is, go downwind, pull those lines tight without hooking in, go upwind, find the approximate edge of your window, then hook in, go upwind the rest of the way, do your backline tension check, then your 360, and if all's good, launch and go out. I hope you use this launch procedure, or if you've got your own procedure, as long as you're checking all these things, and you can be confident that you're not going to have any surprises when the kite leaves your helper's hand. Okay, we'll end that there.